a man stands in a field with soil under his fingernails and his brother's blood on his hands. He is the first human ever born on Earth. You start to see a thread that connects every major crisis in the text. This is not a random sequence of tragedies. But this strategy, targeting the seed while it is still small enough to fit in a cradle, is not a new invention. The enemy has used this exact playbook before. Not with a paranoid grandmother holding a dagger, but with an entire empire weaponizing a river. But maybe a single assassin with a dagger feels like ancient history to you. If you want to understand how this ancient war actually touches the world you live in right now, you have to look at how the enemy uses empires. Because the enemy knows that you do not always need a blade to eliminate a threat. Sometimes, you just need a system. If you have ever felt like the culture around you is systematically rigged to suffocate your faith, if you feel a constant, crushing pressure designed to drown out your convictions before they can ever mature, you are not imagining it. You are recognizing the empire strategy. You are feeling the weight of the exact same blueprint Pharaoh used in Egypt. When the Hebrew people were multiplying in the land of Goshen, the Egyptian king did not send lone assassins into the night. He weaponized the environment itself. He turned the Nile River, the very source of life and agriculture for the entire nation, into a mass grave. He ordered every newborn Hebrew boy to be thrown into the cold, muddy currents. The decree was not a political policy. It was a biological dragnet. It is a targeted assassination attempt spanning 4,000 years. The place to start is the most overlooked sentence in the Garden of Eden. It was a calculated net cast over an entire generation, designed to catch the promised seed before he could ever learn to walk. If every male child is swallowed by the river, the deliverer cannot rise, and the bloodline washes out into the Mediterranean Sea. The enemy uses the infrastructure of the state to perform a cosmic extermination, making spiritual warfare look like national security. But a mother weaves a small basket out of bulrushes. She seals it with thick, black pitch to keep the water out. She places her son inside, and she floats him directly into the jaws of the empire, right into the bathing pool of Pharaoh's own daughter. The boy is pulled from the water. Moses is raised in the palace. The line survives the river. The systemic dragnet fails. Just like the midnight assassin failed, the seed is miraculously preserved through centuries of famine, slavery, and slaughter. But the enemy has a very long memory, and he does not abandon a tactic that almost worked. Because centuries later, he will combine both of these terrifying strategies, the paranoid monarch and the systemic slaughter, when a new star suddenly ignites in the night sky. Heavy boots hit the cobblestone streets of Bethlehem. Torches push back the freezing night air. Swords scrape against leather scabbards. The moment God speaks to a serpent in the dust. Picture the scene. The fruit has been eaten. The leaves have been frantically stitched together. Soldiers kick in wooden doors. Mothers scream in the dark. A star burns in the black sky. Foreign dignitaries ride into Jerusalem. They bring chests of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They ask a question that makes the entire capital tremble. Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? King Herod sits miles away in a paranoid rage. He consults the scribes. The ancient scrolls point to a tiny, insignificant farming village. Herod smiles. He tells the wise men to report back. When they do not return, he issues a decree. Every male child in Bethlehem under 2 years old must die. No exceptions. No mercy. The enemy is making one final, desperate sweep. If you only read the Gospel of Matthew, you see a violent, insecure politician trying to protect his throne. But John the Revelator pulls back the curtain on the unseen realm. In Revelation chapter 12, he describes a cosmic vision of this exact night. A woman cries out in labor. A massive red dragon stands directly in front of her. It has 7 heads. It has 10 horns. It waits with its jaws wide open. It wants to devour the child the exact second he takes his first breath. Herod is merely the physical weapon. The dragon is the serpent from the garden, fully grown. This is not a tragic footnote in Roman history. The evening breeze is cold on human skin for the very first time, and they are hiding in the trees. It is the climax of a 4,000-year assassination plot. The serpent that slithered in the dust of Eden has become a leviathan, and it is terrified of a baby in a feeding trough. Because the enemy knows the ancient grammar, he knows the singular Zera has arrived. If this child survives the night, the countdown to the crushed head begins. But an angel whispers to Joseph in a dream, "Wake up, take the child, run to Egypt." Joseph packs in the pitch black. The donkey's hooves are muffled in the dirt. They slip out of town just before the swords arrive. The dragnet closes on empty air. The blood of the innocents soaks the ground, but the target escapes into the desert. The floodwaters receded, and the seed survived. Isaac was unbound from the altar, and the seed survived. Joash was hidden in a temple, and the seed survived. Moses floated down the river, and the seed survived. And now, the true seed slips through the fingers of Rome. The boy grows up. He learns to swing a hammer. He walks the dusty roads of Galilee. The dragon failed to kill him in the cradle, so the strategy must change one last time. The final battle will not happen in a nursery. It will happen on a skull-shaped hill outside the city walls. God does not just speak to Adam and Eve. He turns his attention to the serpent, and he delivers a judgment that will dictate the rest. Look at the heavy, rusted iron spikes used in a first-century Roman crucifixion. If you analyze the brutal mechanics of the execution, the true horror is not just in the lacerations. The horror is in the gravity. A human body suspended by the wrists must constantly push upward to keep the chest cavity from collapsing. And to push upward, the victim must press their full body weight down onto a massive iron nail driven straight through the feet. Every single breath requires a violent, agonizing pressure on the heel. For 4,000 years, the enemy has been trying to stop this bloodline. He missed in the dirt with Cain. He missed on the altar with Isaac. He missed in the palace with Joash. He missed in the river with Moses. He missed in the manger with Jesus. But now, the sky goes pitch black at 3 in the afternoon. The crowd jeers. The Roman guards cast lots. And the seed of the woman is pinned to dead wood, suffocating under his own weight. The serpent finally strikes the heel. The venom goes in. The pulse stops. The enemy watches the lungs empty. He sees the head bow. He feels the cold reality of a corpse being wrapped in heavy linen, smelling of myrrh, of human history. He says, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed," and sealed securely behind a massive stone. To the physical eye, this looks like the ultimate victory of the dragon. Most people read the crucifixion as the moment the powers of darkness temporarily won, only to be surprised by God's backup plan on Sunday morning. But that reading completely misses the trap that was set in Eden. The cross is not the moment the enemy defeats the seed. It is the anvil where the serpent's head is crushed. When the jaw of the ancient serpent closes on the heel of Christ, the serpent does not realize he is biting down on the very thing that will destroy him. Because the penalty for human rebellion is death. And the only way to break the dark, legal power of death is to enter it, absorb it, and exhaust it from the inside out. By murdering the innocent seed, the enemy inadvertently shatters his own legal claim over humanity. He strikes the heel, and the heel comes down with the force of a cosmic hammer. Look at the agricultural reality of the Hebrew word zera. If you want to completely eliminate a physical seed, you crush it on a rock. You throw it into a fire. You do whatever it takes to keep it away from the soil. Because the moment a seed goes into the dirt, the rules of biology change. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Enmity, a blood feud. This is where the clock starts ticking. The outer shell must break. The kernel must die. But that death is the precise mechanism that releases the life hidden inside. Jesus himself said it days before the cross. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The enemy spent 4 millennia trying to eradicate the Zera, and in his final, triumphant moment of blinding rage, he takes the singular seed of the woman and he buries it in the cold, dark earth of a garden tomb. He thinks he has buried the threat forever. But a seed is not destroyed by the dirt. It is activated by it. The tomb is not a burial vault. It is a seedbed. And what breaks through the soil on the third morning changes the genetic makeup of the universe forever. The ground shakes violently in the dark. The heavy Roman seal shatters. The massive stone rolls backward. The thick linen cloths collapse on the cold limestone slab. The overwhelming smell of myrrh is swallowed by the fresh morning wind. A man with scars on his feet walks out into the dawn. The seed has broken through the soil. Imagine the sheer panic in the unseen realm on Sunday morning. From this moment on, the enemy has one singular, terrifying objective. If he can destroy the woman's offspring, the seed he can prevent. For 4,000 years, the enemy hunted a single, fragile bloodline. He watched the line of Seth. He attacked the sons of Jacob. He surrounded the house of David. He tracked the promise through the desert. He chased it down the river. He sent assassins into the nursery. He thought he had finally pinned it to the wood. But he misunderstood the fundamental laws of the harvest. When you bury a single kernel of wheat, it does not stay single. It breaks open. It dies. It germinates. And it multiplies. It brings forth a harvest that can never be contained in a single fist again. Look at what Paul writes next. Back in that dusty room, writing to the churches in Galatia, he drops a theological earthquake. He already proved that Jesus is the singular, ultimate seed of Abraham, the solitary target the enemy was frantically hunting. But in chapter 3, verse 9 and 10, Paul shifts the grammar entirely. He writes, "And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise." The singular noun becomes a massive, plural, multitude. The one becomes many. This is not a metaphor. It is a multiplication. The enemy was fighting a biological war. God was planning a spiritual invasion. The enemy spent millennia trying to wipe out one man, his own head from being crushed. And so, the manhunt begins. In the very next chapter, the first child ever born, Cain, picks up a stone. But when that man walked out of the garden tomb, he brought a forest with him. The bloodline is no longer confined to a vulnerable royal family in Jerusalem. It is no longer dependent on a human king sitting on a physical throne. It cannot be starved out by a famine. It cannot be drowned in a muddy river. It cannot be slaughtered by a paranoid king. It cannot be nailed to a tree. The true seed is now carried by the Spirit. It is poured into fishermen. It is given to tax collectors. It is grafted into Gentiles. It is spreading across the Roman roads. It is crossing oceans. It is stepping out of the ancient world and into the present day. The dragon failed. The head is completely crushed. If the enemy could not extinguish the singular seed when it was trapped in a cradle, he has absolutely no chance of stopping it now. And when you stand at the empty tomb and look all the way back to the Garden of Eden, the entire bloody war suddenly makes perfect sense. A brother picked up a stone in the first field, and the line found another son. An old man raised a flint knife over a wooden altar, and a ram caught its horns in the thicket. He murders the second child, Abel. The line is violently cut. The promise seems dead on arrival. But Eve has another son. She names him Seth. An empire turned the Nile River into a mass grave, and a pitch-covered basket floated into a palace. A paranoid grandmother sent swords into a midnight nursery, and a toddler was smuggled into a temple. A terrified king slaughtered the infants of Bethlehem, and the true king slipped safely into the desert. The ancient serpent finally drove an iron spike through the heel of the deliverer, and the head of the dragon was crushed forever. And the enemy buried the singular seed in a cold stone tomb, and an unstoppable harvest walked out into the dawn. Same enemy, same obsession. One unbreakable promise. But maybe the part that stays with me most is that single, one-year-old boy named Joash, hidden behind the thick stone walls of the temple while an assassin sat on the throne outside. The entire salvation of the world. The only thing keeping the ancient promise of Eden alive was down to a single, fragile heartbeat in the dark. God let the line get that thin. just to prove that human odds mean absolutely nothing to a divine vow. If you are in a season where the pressure feels suffocating, if you are in a season where the promises of God feel terrifyingly fragile, and he has just committed the first murder, the body of Abel lies in the dirt, the victim of a jealous rage. The text tells us she names him this because God has appointed another seed in place of Abel. The seed survives. Where it seems like the empire is winning and your faith is barely surviving the night, remember the nature of a seed. A seed does not look like much. It is vulnerable. It is small. It can be buried under layers of heavy dirt. But what the enemy always mistakes for a burial is actually a planting. When the darkness closes in, it is not the end of the story. It is the biological prerequisite for a resurrection. Your failures do not erase your name, and the dirt thrown on top of you does not cancel your harvest. And may the God who protected the seed through famine and flood, through swords and rivers, watch over whatever he has planted inside of you and bring you out carrying a life the enemy can never touch. But the enemy now knows the rules of engagement. If the promised seed must come through a human bloodline, then the bloodline becomes the battlefield. And the next time the line is threatened, the stakes will be infinitely higher, because the target will not just be one brother. It will be the entire human race. If you unroll the scrolls of the Old Testament, you will find an absolute obsession with genealogies. Page after page of begotten sons. It reads like a ledger of human history, tracking the passage of life from father to son. In ancient Near Eastern biology, the man was viewed as the one who carried the seed. The woman was simply the fertile soil that received it, nurtured it, and brought it forth. The lineage always, without exception, belonged to the father, which is why the curse in the Garden of Eden is so jarring. God tells the serpent that his ultimate defeat will come at the hands of the seed of the woman. In the ancient mind, a woman possessing her own seed is a biological contradiction. It is a glitch in the patriarchal structure of the ancient world. But the target was not just a brother. The target was a bloodline. It happens here in the silence of the first generation. This is not a copyist's error. It is the first quiet whisper of a virgin birth. It is a signal that the one who will eventually crush the serpent's head will bypass the normal rules of human reproduction. But until that moment arrives, thousands of years later, the promise has to survive. The brutal, physical reality of human history. The deliverer must be born. And to be born, the ancestral chain cannot be broken. The enemy understands the assignment perfectly. He is not fighting a theological war of ideas. He is fighting a biological war of attrition. If you reread the Old Testament through this lens, the seemingly random acts of violence suddenly snap into a terrifying grid. You are watching a cosmic game of chess where one player is desperately trying to clear the board of a specific, fragile bloodline. When the line of Seth begins to multiply, the earth descends into a darkness and corruption, so deep that God sends a flood to wash the canvas clean. It is a total system failure. The enemy nearly bankrupts the host species before the promise can take root. But a wooden ark settles into the wet mud of Mount Ararat, and the seed steps out into the sunlight. So the strategy shifts. If the enemy cannot drown the entire board, he will snipe. It happens again in a palace nursery in Jerusalem, where a frantic grandmother orders the slaughter of her own grandchildren, the individual pieces. He watches as the timeline narrows. He tracks the promise from Noah to Shem, all the way down to a nomad named Abraham. God tells Abraham that his specific offspring will be the vehicle for the world's rescue. The target is now locked. The cosmic spotlight falls on a single, elderly couple, waiting decades in the dust for a child who seems biologically impossible. When that child finally arrives, the enemy sees his opening. And a few years later, that singular heir finds himself walking up a rocky ridge, feeling the weight of rough wood on his back, completely unaware that his blood is the only thing keeping the promise alive. A father and a son climb a mountain. The air is thin. The boy carries the wood on his own back. The father carries the fire and the flint knife. They walk in silence. Isaac asks the question that echoes through the canyon. Here's the fire in the wood. But where is the lamb? Abraham gives an answer that is a prophecy he does not yet understand. God will provide for himself the lamb. The enemy watches. He waits. The entire promise of God is down to a single biological thread. One boy, one pulse. If Isaac dies on this mountain, the bloodline dies with him. The altar is built. The rough stone is cold against the boy's back. It happens in the mud of the Nile River, where newborn boys are drowned by the thousands. And it happens in a quiet village called Bethlehem. The rope bites into his wrists. The flint knife catches the sunlight as it is raised high in the air. This is not just a test of a father's faith. It is a choke point in history. But a voice splits the silence. The knife stops. A ram thrashes in the thicket, its horns caught in the branches. The blood of a substitute soaks into the dirt. The boy lives. The seed survives. So the enemy pivots. He targets the next generation. Esau raises a militia of 400 men to slaughter his brother Jacob in the desert. The line of the seed almost ends in the sand. The seed survives. He targets the next generation. 10 jealous brothers look at a dreamer named Joseph. They strip off his coat. They throw him into a dry pit. They sell him as a slave to passing merchants. The line of the seed almost disappears into a foreign prison. The seed survives. A severe famine sweeps across the ancient Middle East. The ground cracks. The crops wither. The entire chosen family faces starvation in the dust of Canaan. The line of the seed is almost starved out of existence. They flee to Egypt. They survive on Pharaoh's grain. They settle in the land of Goshen. And they begin to multiply. Every generation is a near miss. Every generation is a biological cliffhanger. The enemy is relentlessly, obsessively trying to sever the line, where a paranoid king sends soldiers with swords into the dark. Same pattern again and again. But why? Why this intense, laser-focused obsession with preventing this one specific family from bringing forth life? To answer that, you have to look at the exact word God spoke back in the garden, because there is a massive clue hiding in the grammar itself. Look at the Hebrew text of Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. The ink on the ancient parchment carries a grammatical secret that rabbis and scholars debated for centuries. God promises that the ultimate victory will come through the woman's offspring. The word your English Bible translates as seed or offspring in that verse is the Hebrew noun zerah. In its most literal, physical sense, zerah is an agricultural term. It is the hard kernel you press into the dark, damp soil, hoping for rain to bring a harvest. But when applied to human genealogies, the Hebrew language does something fascinating with this word. Zerah is a collective singular noun. It functions exactly like the English words sheep or offspring. It can refer to a massive, plural, multitude, an entire nation of millions of people. Or it can refer to one single, solitary individual, a single grain of wheat. For centuries, the enemy was attacking the multitude, trying to wipe out the entire family tree of Abraham. But thousands of years later, a Jewish scholar named Paul sits in a dusty room in the 1st century, holding a reed pen. An empire, a monarch, or a murderer obsessed with wiping out a single family line, bringing it down to the very edge of extinction. He is writing a letter to the churches in Galatia. And in Galatians chapter 3, verse 16, Paul points his finger directly at the ancient grammar of Genesis. He writes, "Now the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed." He does not say, "and to seeds," as referring to many, but rather to one. "And to your seed," that is, Christ. That single grammatical reality changes everything. The promise in Eden is not a general prediction of human resilience. It is a hyper-specific prophecy of a singular champion. The serpent's head will not be crushed by an army. It will be crushed by one man, born of a woman, carrying the uncorrupted Zerah into the battlefield of earth. And once the enemy realizes that the deliverer is not just a collective group, but a singular king who will sit on the throne of David, The target locks onto the royal family. If seeing the architecture of the original language completely changes how you read these stories, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the enemy escalates the war. If the ultimate threat is a singular royal heir, then starving the nation in a famine is no longer enough. The royal bloodline of David must be hunted down and surgically eradicated. Most people assume these are just isolated stories of biblical conflict, tragic historical events, the devil causing general chaos, or ancient empires acting like ancient empires. The chessboard shrinks from a massive nation down to a single royal house. And the strategy becomes breathtakingly violent, because hundreds of years later, the silence of a palace nursery in Jerusalem is about to be shattered by the sound of assassins walking down the marble hallway. Blood pools on the limestone floors of the royal palace in Jerusalem. The scent of iron and panic hangs thick in the midnight air. Torchlight flickers against cold stone walls. King Ahaziah is dead. His mother, Athaliah, seizes the crown. She does not just claim the throne. She issues a decree that defies natural human instinct. She orders the immediate, total extermination of her own grandchildren. Every royal prince, every grandson, every infant who carries the DNA of King David. The palace guards draw their swords. They march down the marble corridors. Heavy boots kick open the wooden doors of the nursery. The weeping of nurses echoes off the stone, one by one. The heirs are slaughtered in their beds. The royal bloodline is violently severed. The seed appears to be dead. This is not a standard political coup. It is a biological purge. If the house of David is wiped out tonight, the prophecy of the Messiah fails. If the prophecy fails, the serpent wins the war that started in Eden. But if you look closer at the strange promise made in the opening pages of Genesis, at the specific target of these attacks, the stakes are not just a temporary crown in Jerusalem. The stakes are the eternal salvation of the world. The enemy is moving in for the kill. But a woman named Jehosheba slips into the chaos. She moves through the shadows of the slaughterhouse. She finds a single, one-year-old boy named Joash. He is the very last pulse of David's lineage left on the face of the earth. She wraps him in a heavy cloak. She holds her hand over his fragile mouth to muffle his cries as armed guards pass by in the dark. She smuggles him out of the palace and hides him in a dusty bedroom inside the temple of God. For 6 years, the boy stays hidden behind those thick stone walls. He learns to walk in silence. He learns to play without making a sound. He learns to whisper in the dark. The entire hope of humanity rests on the lungs of a toddler in hiding. Outside, Queen Athaliah wears the crown. She thinks the line of David is eradicated forever. She thinks she has successfully broken the ancestral chain. But the seed survives, down to a single heartbeat. It is a terrifyingly close call, proving just how desperate the enemy has become.